Hello, everyone. It's yours truly, Baphomet, and welcome to the first episode of the Tarot. So, I decided I'm going to get into it before my own self-edification, and because it's the solstice, and it's something I want to be doing a little bit differently on this channel, as I want to shift away from, the general just vlogging sort of stuff. I actually want to give something of value back. Now, I want to preface this by saying I wouldn't call myself a master of the tarot. Or I completely understand its symbolism, okay? But I would still say I'm fairly competent in its symbolism, what it all means, and that I'm generally much better than the average occult hack on YouTube. So, with all that said and out of the way, I think we should get into it, which is the Fool, which is an archetype I sort of identify with, because if you sort of go down to, where is it? So for my first name, Matthew, it's syncretic there. And my first dog, my first dog that I personally adopted, his name was Zero. So there's a lot of that too. And a lot of things was lining up with my life that sort of bring forth this, I guess you could say, syncretism. And that's what you should be doing. Some people, and I'm not the only fool, I'm guessing. I'm sure there's plenty of other fools on this planet. In fact, there's heaps of fucking fools on this planet. Some good, some bad, some ugly. And the same thing with magicians and that kind of thing. And I think the fool commonly gets commonly misrepresented in the tarot, because it's usually thought about adventures and things like that. But it's a much deeper sort of symbolism that needs to be unpacked here, because it's the Kabbalistic zero. It's basically pure potentiality. It's starting from the zero, the 0 point field. And the reason why it's, as you can see, it's got like the air symbol. It's attributed to air. That's because that's the sinusoidal wave. Because thought basically breaks apart, because any kind of thought is movement in of itself, and it causes the descent into matter. So that's basically what the Kabbalistic tree of life is here. As you can see, so you go Ein Sof, Hour, limitless light. So yeah, there are three Kabbalistic veils of the negative existence, and in themselves they formulate the hidden ideas of the Sephirot, not yet called into being. And they are concentrated in Keter, which is in the sense is the Malkuth of hidden ideas of the Sephirot. There you go. The first veil of negative existence is in the Ein, negativity. This word consists of three letters, which thus shadow forth the first three Sephirot or numbers. The second veil is the Ein Sof, the limitless. This title consists of 6 letters and shadows forth the idea of the first 6 Sephirot or numbers. The third veil is Ein Sof Hour, the limitless light. This, again, consists of 9 letters, so 3, 6, 9. So basically, the alchemical numbers, they're all... So 3 is a triangular number, 6 is a triangular number, and 9 is a circular number. So, when you multiply 3 by 3, it becomes 9. When you multiply by 6 by 3, it becomes 18, which, when reduced, becomes 9. So it's back to 0 again. So yeah, there actually is that alchemical or numerology, I guess you could say, in Ein Sof and Ein Sof Hour. And I think this it's something I actually never looked at before. So that's something to really consider, because maybe it's got something to do with that whole thing. And 3, 6, and 9, when that gets reduced, what do we get? Yeah, we get 18 again. It becomes 0 again. So 3, 6, and 9 reduced becomes 18 again. It and becomes 9. So full circle, round and round and round in circles we go. But yeah, let's continue. But when reached the number 9, we cannot progress farther without returning to the unity or the number 1. There you go. So basically, because you can't progress farther past a 0 or a 9. For the number 10 is but a repetition of unity freshly derived from the negative, as is evident from a glance at its ordinary representation in Arabic numerals, where the circle 0 represents the negative and the I the unity. Thus, then, the limitless ocean of negative light does not proceed from a center for its centerlessness, but it concentrates a center, which is the number 1 of the Sephirot, Keter, the crown, the first Sephirot, which therefore may be said to be the Malkuth, or the number 10 of the hidden Sephirot. Thus, Keter is in Malkuth, and Malkuth is in Keter, but after another fashion. That's not mentioned here. So basically, it's the whole idea that when matter descended into light, it's sort of descended from one source, and everything is one fabric, by the way. Like, everything kind of comes from the same fabric. Everything is prone to be dead or alive, or to be more there's this thing in spagyric alchemy. There's mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, and the animal kingdom. Basically, all matter is capable of shifting into 3 different modalities of that, and they are all capable. All matter is capable of becoming like earth, water, air, and fire in their own right, or whatever passage that may be. So let's begin. So the Fool, which is actually kind of interesting, because fun, the word fun, like to have fun, means to fool around. So I sometimes wonder if that is like a bit of a clue that, hey, we're just here for the experience. This place is not supposed to be taken too seriously, and it's just a fucking joke in the end. And sometimes it gets relegated. I think sometimes it's called the Jester, depending on which tarot card deck you go with. But let's sort of, I guess, go with the meaning with the tarot, and then I could flesh it out a little bit. Let's be like a bit like a tarot card housewife for a bit, shall we? In spiritual matters, the Thul mean idea, thought, spirituality, that which endeavors to transcend earth in material matters, and may, if badly dignified, mean folly, eccentricity, or even mania. But the essential of this card is that it represents an original, subtle, sudden impulse or impact coming from a completely strange quarter. All such impulses are right, rightly received, and the good or ill interpretation of the card depends entirely on the right attitude of the querent. Okay, so the Fool, that simply means, I guess, when we're talking about originality, there's basically this original idea to spring forth from the Fool, and usually it's unusual. And it's new, and it's usually regarded as folly, idiocy, and that kind of thing. So that's why you have the Fool, and there are many fools on this planet. I'd say that, like, some of our historical figures were fools, such as Friedrich Nietzsche, Anton LaVey could even come under that. I would even say some prolific engineers like Nikola Tesla. Basically, the Fool is just this original idea and original impulse when we're talking about its manifestation on planet Earth. Okay, let's begin with the first reading. How long have I been recording for, fellas? 8 minutes already, fuck. Okay, let's get to it. This card is attributed to the letter Aleph, which means an ox. By its shape, the Hebrew letter, so it is said, represents a plowshare. Thus, the significance is primary, phallic. It is the first of the 3 mother letters, Aleph, Mem, and Shin, which correspond in various interwoven fashions with all the triads that occur in these cards, notably fire, war, air, father, mother, sun, sulfur, salt, mercury, rajas, sattvas, and tamas. So basically, I guess that's talking about like the source of it all, because if you look at Keter in the 777 data, I'll actually just pull it up quickly. It's element with the root of air. So air is actually, in a sense, the primordial OG element to exist. Okay, when we're talking about primordial elements, and what actually came from them is thought, and thought gave birth to fire and water, and then earth is being the vehicle to have all 3 of those elements sort of go into it. So there's that. Now let's go back to it. The really important feature of this card is that its number should be 0. It represents, therefore, the negative above the tree of life, the source of all things. It is the Kabbalistic 0. It is the equation of the universe, the initial and final balance of the opposites. There you go. See what I said? Like initial and final balance of opposites. So it's the equilibrium. And this card, therefore, quintessence, fuck it, whatever, means a vacuum. So yeah, like solvent coagular union of opposites. I'm a vacuum. I'm a fucking airbag, guys. There you go. I'm a fucking black hole. Think about that. Think about that for a second, actually. Actually, I might talk about that a little bit in another video because that actually, in a sense, corresponds to the symbolism of Lilith. Which is very Lilith, obviously associated with the left-hand path and sexual transgression and all the other kinds of things. But there's a lot. I think that's just a profane, exoteric understanding of her. She represents so much more than that, and she actually represents some kind of scientific phenomena. In the medieval pack, the title of the card is Le Mat, adapted from the Italian matto, madman or fool. The proprietary of this title will be considered later. There is another, or one might say, a complementary theory. If one assumes that the tarot is of Egyptian origin, one may suppose that Mat, this card being the key card in the whole pack, really stands for Malt, the vulture goddess, who is an earlier and more sublime modification of the idea of Nuith than Isis. There are 2 legends connected with the vulture. It is supposed to have a spiral neck. This may be possible as a reference to the theory recently revived by Einstein, but mentioned by Zoroaster in his oracles, that the shape of the universe, the form of that energy which is called the universe, is spiral. That's technically true, actually, because when you look at music, it's a spiral. Technically, it's oscillation of waves, and I guess thought is no different because when you think of one thing, it actually generates its opposite. It's the same sort of thing. And in Aboriginal cosmology, there is also the rainbow serpent, which looks like a double helix. Same sort of idea. So, or that the primordial universe is in fact a spiral or a spermatozoa, all that kind of thing. The hermit. The other legend is that the vulture was supposed to reproduce her species by the intervention of the wind. In other words, the element of it is considered as the father of all manifested existence. There is a parallel in Anaximenes' school of Greek philosophy. Yeah, so element of air, the father of all that is manifested, like I was saying before. This card is therefore both the father and the mother in the most abstract form of these ideas. This is not a confusion, but a deliberate identification of the male and the female, which is justified by biology. The fertilized ovum is sexually neutral. It is only some unknown determinant in the course of development which decides the issue. It is necessary to acclimatize oneself to this at first sight strange idea. As soon as one has made up one's mind to consider the feminine aspect of things, the masculine element should immediately appear in the same flash of thought to counterbalance it. This identification is complete in itself. Philosophically speaking, it is only later that one must consider the question of the result or formulating 0 as +1 plus -1. Results of so doing is to formulate the idea of tetragrammaton. Yeah, I shouldn't have done this while I was tired, but you know what? Fuck it. I need to earn a living, so I'm tired from work today. But I guess what is being said here, it is only a matter of one must consider the question of result of formulating 0 as +1 plus -1. Because when you add them together, it still forms a 0, right? Like +1 take 1 is 0. But +1 plus -1 is also 0. They are functionally, that idea, when I think about it actually, is functionally different. Like those 2 equations, while giving you the same result, are functionally different. One is about adding together, causing the 0. The other one is about subtracting, take it away, and I guess causing the zero. Basically, the idea of negatives and positives, mathematically speaking, they're ontologically parasitic. I actually never fucking thought about that. I should fucking write that down, because basically, yeah, in order for this universe to exist, it has to sort of like split itself apart. And I guess if we want to marry opposites together, they are ontologically cannibalize themselves. So think about that. Because like the one and the one, or the two become one, which is a zero, they no longer exist. So consider that. Okay, formula of tetragrammaton. It is explained in the essay, see 1630 et al., that the whole of the tarot is based upon the tree of life, and that the tree of life is always cognate with tetragrammaton. One may sum up the whole doctrine very briefly as follows. The union of the father and the mother produces twins, the son going forward to the daughter returning the energy to the father. By this cycle of changing, the stability and eternity of the universe are assured. The union of the father, the son's going forward to the daughter. The daughter returning the energy to the father, which, when I think about it, no, that's not correct. I just had a thought, and I might have thought something, but it's incorrect. It is necessary, in order to understand the tarot, to go back in history to the matriarchal and exogamic age, to the time when succession was not through the firstborn son of the king, but through his daughter. Interesting. Okay. The king was therefore not king by inheritance, but by right of conquest. In the most stable dynasties, the new king was always a stranger, a foreigner. What is more, he had to kill the old king and marry the king's daughter. This system ensured the virility and capacity of every king. The stranger had to win his bride in open competition. In the oldest fairy tales, this motive is continually repeated. The ambitious stranger is often a troubadour. Nearly always he is disguised, often in a repulsive form. It's kind of interesting that they talk about that, actually, because I did kind of look pretty fucking repulsive about 6 years ago. I look beautiful now, but you know, I'm pretty self-confident in that. So, but let's continue. Beauty and the Beast is a typical tale. There is often a corresponding camouflage about the king's daughter, as in the case of Cinderella and the Enchanted Princess. The tale of Aladdin gives the whole of this fable in a very elaborate form, packed with technical tales of magic. Yeah, so the Aladdin sort of had to prove his wealth and that he was a king. Well, he had to sort of prove that he was a king, and usually that it was about getting giant dowries and causing the impossible to happen with the servitors. So with jinn, that's what genie are. Genie is like a plural term for jinn. Or is it the other way around? Fuck, doesn't matter. But the point is, it's like basically solid. Aladdin was using servitor magic. So there's that. Okay, here then is the foundation of the legend of the Wandering Prince. And note well, he is always the fool of the family. Yeah, so to go back on that, so like Aladdin was, I've read the whole story. Aladdin was just this one who was in the street quarters, and he was just a dirtbag. He pretty much did nothing all day. He was a dipshit, essentially. That actually kind of makes me feel better in some respects. I might talk about that later in another video, actually. This is why I wanted to do this video, man, because I knew something was going to happen when I started talking about this stuff. So yeah, Aladdin was like this pauper, useless dropkick, but he became like a very powerful king through the use of magic. So, and note well, he is always the fool of the family. The connection between foolishness and holiness is traditional. It is no sneer that the family nitwit had better go into the church. In the East, the madman is believed to be possessed, a holy man or prophet. So deep is this identity that it is actually embedded in the language. Silly means empty the vacuum of air, zero the silly buckets on the deck. And the word is from the German selig, holy, blessed. It is the innocence of the fool which most strongly characterizes him. It will be seen later how important is this feature of the story. To ensure the succession, it was therefore devised, firstly, that the blood royal should really be the royal blood, and secondly, that this strain should be fortified by the introduction of the conquering stranger instead of being attenuated by continual inbreeding. Yeah, man. Like, look at her fucking geriatric leadership, man. When I think about it, I don't want to go into politics or anything, but like, it's the same sort of idea, right? They might not literally inbreed, but they inbreed in the same sort of clique. If you think about it, they're inbred. I don't think it. Maybe not genetically they're inbred, but our leadership is certainly spiritually inbred. Because they're all in this one little clique and they don't allow anyone in, and so there's that. In certain cases, this theory was pushed very far. There was probably a great deal of chicanery about this disguised prince. It may well have been that the king, his father, furnished him with very secret letters of introduction. In short, that the old political game was old even in those primeval times. The custom is therefore developed in the condition so admirably investigated by Fraser in the Golden Bow. This bow is no doubt a symbol of the king's daughter herself. The king's daughter is all glorious within. Her raiment is of wrought gold. How did such a development come to pass? There may have been a reaction against playing politics. There may have been a glorification, first of all, of the gentleman burglar, finally the mere gangster boss, rather as we have seen in our own times, and a reaction against Victorianism. The wandering prince was closely examined as to his credentials. Unless he were an escaped criminal, he was not eligible to compete, nor was it sufficient for him to win the king's daughter in open competition. Live in the lap of luxury until the old king died and succeeded him in peace. He was obliged to murder the old king with his own hand. And, I have heard about, militant republics, and I'm not too sure how well they've gone. I think maybe you don't really see militant republics for the same reason that people try to hold on to their power, because it's it's that kind of thing. Look, I'm not condoning violence or anything like that. I think people should be done on their merits, but I think if we're going back to the old Aeon sort of times, maybe that was the best way to sort of I guess see where it was all going. Basically, if you were strong and you were powerful, you'd be able to topple the king. Because usually some kings were very virile and they were warriors. Genghis Khan, perfect example. He was a virile warrior and he outbested a lot of his enemies. Okay. Okay, so yeah. At first sight, it would appear that the formula is in the union of the extremely masculine, the big blonde beast, with the extremely feminine, the princess who could not sleep if there was a pea up her 7 feather beds. But all such symbolism defeats itself. The soft becomes the hard, the rough the smooth, the deep one goes into the formula. The closer becomes the identification of the opposites. The dove is the bird of Venus, but the dove is also a symbol of the Holy Ghost, that is, of the phallus in its most sublimated form. There is therefore no reason for surprise in observing the identification of the father with the mother. Yeah, that's definitely true, because I sort of remember thinking about in the Gnostic Mass, and you can go look this up yourself. Basically, in one of the verses, it's man veiled in woman form. The hermit. So basically, there's a central intelligence of every single particle, right? That is actually sort of generating and upholding it. So the very center of everything is masculine. I mean, think about our Earth, for example. It's it's a center core, and it's basically like a mini sun. It's a mini sun in the center, masculine. And I think that is sort of the same for every single particle that exists in this planet. There's a little tiny sinusoidal wave that is generating it and holding it up. Masculine. I think that's also the other thing, right? The soft becomes the hard, and people can flip poles, I don't know. You've heard about some a super masculine dude's being super gay. Everyone's heard about that. Come on. And I think that's the same sort of thing, right? Or tomboys who are really into all the male stuff also happen to be into women. I know I'm just sort of spitballing like the usual, I guess, stereotypes, but like you get what I mean, right? A bit like how some weakling can become like this force to be reckoned with, and vice versa, actually. Like, it can happen the other way too. So always keep that in mind, fellas. Marry the opposites, masculine and feminine, otherwise you will be fucked. Naturally, when ideas is so sublime be vulgarized, they fail to exhibit the symbol of with lucidity. The great Hierophant, confronted with a thoroughly ambiguous symbol, is compelled, just because of his office as Hierophant, that is, one who manifests the mystery, to diminish the message to the dog. This he must do by exhibiting a symbol of the second order, a symbol suited to the intelligence of the second order of initiates. This symbol, instead of being universal and thus beyond ordinary expression, must be further adapted to the intellectual capacity of the particular set of people whom it is the business of the Hierophant to initiate. Such truth, accordingly, appears to the vulgar as fable, parable, legend, even creed. In the case of this comprehensive symbol of the fool, there are, with an actual knowledge, several quite distinct traditions, very clear and historically very important. These must be considered separate in order to understand the single doctrine from which it all sprang. Yeah, so they must be exhibiting symbol of second order suited. You know what, guys? So next up, we've got basically a bunch of different different ideas about the fall. So we sort of gone through like its, I guess, etymology and epistemology, I guess, and what the actual tarot card represents in a very scientific sense. So let's recap a little bit. What did we talk about? We talked about full being like what manifests the universe in the first place, and it's usually implies an original thought or impulse. Okay, original thoughts and impulses. It also is basically the union of masculine and feminine, and that's sort of well, basically it is the vacuum. It depends if you're the fool who shits out and basically rips the two apart, or you're the one who acts as a vacuum and becomes the masculine and feminine and becoming the zero again. We talked about like the Ein Sof and Ein Sof hour, basically representative of like the alchemical number 3, 6, and 9. We talked about the virility of the king needing to be slain. And we also talked about like I guess how the fool, the one who would topple the king, is usually disguised as a beggar or a scumbag or something like that. And Aladdin is a very fucking perfect example of such a thing. And what other ones were there? Yeah, Beauty and the Beast, it's not exactly the best one, I don't think, but Aladdin's is a perfect representation of this idea of a holy fool who's concealed as a beggar, or rat bag. Anyway, guys, I am yours truly, Baphomet. I am going to go out, and there will be a part 2 very soon. See you later.